Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to my chess games. So in this series I'm gonna publish my chess games that I've played recently, even if they're blitz games or games played for my club. But before we start to analyze my game, I really wanted to sort of thank you that you're following my chess channel. It's really a great thing for me because I changed a little bit my style of playing while analyzing these games and publishing them on my YouTube chess channel because I was considered to be this positional chess player, but now I really have changed a little bit my tactics and I play more aggressive, I have to admit, even if that's sometimes not correct. Sometimes I overcalculate myself, so I try to play more and more interactive, but I really enjoy how I play chess these days, and that's why I wanted to show you this game today that I've played. And it was really a great queen sacrifice that I found even in a blitz game, so even in a fast time format. And as I said, I really wanted to thank you because while analyzing these games I really find more and more ideas, and I've improved my rating now on this chess website Lichess for 100 rating points while analyzing these games, because as I said, I was really considered to be this positional player. I will try to find the good improvements of the position. I was never considered to be this tactical beast, sort of like Mikhail Tal or someone else, because I really don't like this type of chess, because I try to play first from a secure position, then maybe find some different tactics. But now, as I said, I don't know what happened to me. I haven't done that on purpose. It's just I've really changed my style of playing. So let's see now the game. It was against a 2400 rated player, so it was really a strong opponent that I faced today. And I've played, of course, my first move d4. So my opponent answers here with d6. Now he can transpose into many openings like Perch defense, East Indian defense, maybe even the King's Indian. And of course I'm playing the move e4. I don't like to play immediately here the move c4, because this e4 leaves me the flexibility in the game. I can still play the c4 if I like. First I want to play the e4. Now show me your cards, what you're gonna do. And here my opponent showed me here that he's transposing now into this Perch defense. Now I don't like to go in this c4 lines with this tree, because this c4 can always be broken with moves as c5 or e5. So black can transpose here into Benoni or in the King's Indian style. I simply played here knight on c3, perfectly fine, waiting again my opponent what he's gonna do. And here of course bishop on g7. And again, you see, although I most often play this classical system with knight on f3, this knight on f3 is again, well, it's not a bad move, but with bishop on e3 that I've played, again I'm leaving myself sort of a flexibility in the game. That's how you should play openings. You should be flexible, because if you play something like knight on f3, your opponent can play something like bishop on g4. You see, he can attack your knight, pin, and maybe create an attack against this d4. When we play bishop on e3 or something, then if he of course tries knight on f6 and then bishop on g4, then I have f3 and I have a tempo. So I'm staying flexible in the game here after bishop on e3. Now my opponent plays the move a6, and for those who are playing these types of setups against this Perch defense or the modern defense, when you see that your opponent is playing here the move a6 or c6, well, I recommend you to castle on the king side. Most of the times you castle on queen side, and then you try your flank attack here with the move h4, h5, try to trade off the bishops on h6 and create the checkmate threats on the h file. But here with the a6, it seems that it's a calm move, but it's really an aggressive move, because in the next move your opponent can try to play the move b5, and he has already made some progress. If you force here to castle queenside, then you see your opponent has a fast attack against your castle king. So that's why here you should prolong castling as much as you can, because here black has already the possibility to push b5. And what I like about this bishop on e3 idea, if your opponent tries something like c6 here, then you can play f4, going into this Austrian attack style, and because your opponent hasn't gained any space here, he hasn't participated in the attack here on the 5th rank. Of course, we want to grab as much space as we can, because now we have the possibility to even grab some more space with the move e5. So here after a6, as I mentioned, I didn't like now to play this move f4 because b5 is a serious threat. That's why here I simply continued queen on d2. Again, I hope you realize I'm playing this flexible move. I'm not playing knight on f3. I'm gonna play the knight on f3 when I like, although I'm gonna play it anyway, but I want to play it in a different position, not when the bishop has still this very powerful diagonal. Knight on d7, and now I play knight on f3. I hope you realize this ideas now. I don't have the spinning threat, so that's why it's perfectly fine now to play knight on f3, not leaving my opponent any counterplay. Here h6, you see this opening battle is really funny in the beginning. Although you're playing basically the same setups, it's not the same if you play the move in the 4th move or maybe in the 5th move. It's a huge difference. h6, and this move also showed me that my opponent will play this so-called hedgehog formation. So the hedgehog formation is this e6 setup. You'll see now in the continuation. I played simply bishop on d3 because if b5, if your opponent plays b5 now, then I can play this move a4. Of course, b takes a4 is not so powerful. Then I have rook takes on a4, and then this bishop on a6 would be a long-term weakness. So that's why here after bishop on d3 we have e6 played by my opponent, and now we have this hedgehog formation. The problem from white's perspective is if you try something like e5 to push the pawn here on on e5, then your opponent will play simply d5. He will simply pass through. He will not participate in the battle in the center, because he wants to stay flexible with his 2 pawns, battling against these 2 pawns. So that's why he will simply move forward with the pawn, and then he has the preparation to play moves as c5 and c4. The same idea if you try something like d5, then you see this hedgehog formation leaves him this flexibility. He'll simply play the move e5, and now he has the possibility to play the move f5. Although I don't like the setup, I play it sometimes just for fun, but you see it's not so it's really dangerous sometimes. Now if you move the pawns in the center, your opponent can create here really immediate sort of King's Indian setup. Let's flip the board now with f5. You see it's really annoying immediately. Of course it has to be prepared with knight on e7 and then f5, but still with the possibility even to play f4. And if we castle long now, as I said, if we castle queenside, then you have b5 immediately with an attack. You see, you cannot attack here from white's perspective immediately because you don't know where to castle. So tricky stuff already, even in this early stage of the game. In the game, as I said, e6, and now I simply decided to castle. Now knight on e7 was played, and now rook from a to e1. This is now my preparation to finally open the center, force black to castle on the king side. He cannot stay with the king in the center because, as I said, if I try to open the center, he'll simply pass through, and then the position in the center is closed. Then he has, I think, a good counterplay with this potential c5 or f5 moves. It depends, of course, if I move the e5 or the d5. So here my after rook from a to e1, here my opponent tried this b5, and as I said, this a4 move I really like. I simply want to slow down his attack on the queen side with the move b4, and now I have a knight on e2, and this was also sort of a provocative move by me because I wanted him to push the pawn on b4. Now although he got a tempo because my knight is kicked away, but now my knight will go on g3, and then I will have all of my pieces basically aiming here on the king side. And now my idea, you see, all of these pieces, all of the queen, the bishop is aiming here. These knights are also coordinated here on the king side. So that's why my idea is now just to force my opponent here to castle on the king side, or maybe even try to go with this king on f8, g8 or similar idea. So now my main strategical idea is to simply force him to go on the right side of the board. a5, of course, the b5 has to be protected, and now knight on g3. First, I wanted to improve all of my pieces, getting them in attacking formation. I don't have to rush. Here c5 was played, and now c3. I want to stay after potential maybe d takes c4. I have simply c takes d4, pardon me, and now I have again still this central control with my two pawns. And here now I finally, after queen on c7, now I finally decided to push the pawn on d5, because if now, like my opponent did here, e5, of course you cannot take. It leads now into a great tactical game, because now I have simply an open e file, and this could be really dangerous after potential e takes d5. You see, you cannot take this because bishop on h6 is very dangerous. If you try something like king on f8, then you have even rook on e8. You see, very dangerous. After king takes bishop on g7, you have to maybe attack this bishop, but now rook on e1, you see the rook connection will never happen here from black's perspective, so that's why you would be forced to bring something in between. But now queen on g5 would be also dangerous. You have to protect, and you see now all of these pieces are on the back rank. They are simply in defensive style. It's not good. Now bishop on f6, after maybe knight on f6, queen on f6, and you see you cannot close the e file because you have some tactics here. Rook on e6, after f takes e6, bishop on b5 is very dangerous. So staying with this king so long in the center, really, after this move d5, as I mentioned, opening the position is not an option now for black. That's why here he made this flexible move. As I said, when I move one pawn, he will simply pass through. But now I have bishop on b5. Now I'm really forcing my opponent to castle or to move his king. But you see, he cannot castle. If he castles, then he loses simply this h6 pawn, because he played this flexible setup. The h6 is long-term weakness. And if he moves something like g5 in order to prevent this h6 idea, then I have knight on h5. You see this coordination of this knight is very good. Black has many weaknesses here on light squares, many spaces left behind here, so that's why g5 is also not an option. If you try something like here after bishop on b5, if you try something like h5, is also not so dangerous, because bishop on g5 is perfectly fine. Wait, of course you cannot push the pawn here on h4 anymore, and then with this very nice coordination of pieces, I think I would have a favorable game. So that's why king on f8 was played, and now c4. I simply closed the position here, knight on f6, and now I played simply h3, preventing, of course, bishop on g4. That's my main idea. Although I missed some tactics. For many moves. I could have played knight takes on e5 with the possibility to play the move d6. But in this blitz game, I didn't see that. I've seen my main plan to just somehow open the f file. Because sometimes, as I said, we don't see the main ideas, the easiest moves. Now, as I said, my main idea was simply just to open the f file. That's why I have this very powerful rooks on the e and f file. Now my main idea was just to open the position somehow. King on g8. Now b3 is simply improving the position, but it was really a bad move by me. I think it's really unnecessary, because I have fixed the position on the queen side anyway with this bishop and with the support of these two pawns. But okay, I simply want, you see my problems, I simply want to improve position, not to play more dangerous. But okay, b3, it's not that I'm losing here, but it was really unnecessary move. King on h7, and now knight on h2 with the preparation to push the pawn on f4. Again, I could have played knight takes on e5 with the here knight takes on e5, and then push the pawn here on d6. But okay, rook on f8, and now finally f4. Now the position is where I want it to be. Now the position will get open. Now I have this very nice rook activity. I have this very powerful knights, which they are really flexible. They can really create dangerous attacks around black's king. And now e takes f4. You see, if you try something like bishop on b7, then of course now comes this idea, because you cannot take you see, now comes this tactics with this d6 move, and black will lose a piece. So here e takes f4 was played, bishop takes on f4, and now we have g5, and now I found a very nice move. Now finally bishop on d6. So finally I took now this pawn. After queen on d6 we have e5, the fork on the queen and the knight, and here queen on b6. Now I of course took, we have again another fork. You see, on the bishop and the knight, the queen cannot take, and here bishop on f6 was played. And now you see, the problem is that here black has this overload of pieces. He has this protective queen on the bishop, and I wanted to cut off this connection between these two pieces. And now my opponent played bishop on d4. And it seems now that I have to move the king on h1. He'll simply take the pawn, and this is now a good position for black. But as I said in the title, after bishop on d4, I played simply queen takes on d4. So you see, the queen sacrifice. Of course, you have to take the queen or you lose a piece. We have c takes d4, and now d takes e7 again with the tempo. If you try something like rook on g8, you see, I have simply rook on f7. You have to give up the rook basically. If you try something like a king on g6, then simple promotion to queen. If you takes. If you try to attack the rook, then we have rook on b7 with the discovered check, and you lose the queen. So in this continuation, you can even give up here all of these pieces and simply go into favorable endgame with two knights extra. So that's why here bishop on e6 was played. Of course, I took the rook here with the promotion, and now rook takes on f8. And okay, I have now the rook and two pieces for the queen. It's still, you see, I have 5 pawns, my opponent has 6 pawns, so it's nothing lost here for black, but you have to find the best moves. Here I found c5, of course with the preparation. If you take, then bishop on d3 is very, very dangerous. You see, with these two rooks, it's of course very powerful. We have also the possibility to jump with the knight on h5, so it would be a perfect coordination of this minor pieces. Queen on c7 was played, and I have here simply rook takes on e6. We have queen takes on g3, so it was sort of a trade of pieces. But now rook on f6, we have king on g7, and now bishop on c4. Now my bishop is coming on a very active diagonal. Now this main target is f7, and of course you cannot play queen on c7, because I simply trade off all of these pieces and then simply go after this pawn and continue the game with one piece up, so it's not a problem. So pardon me, here after bishop on c4, d3 was played here by black, and now I simply took rook takes on f7, rook takes on f7, king on g6, and now simple rook on d7, d2 was played, knight on f1, of course attacking now finally this pawn. This pawn is my main object here. Queen on f4, and now I simply took queen on d2, and in this position my opponent resigned. I have this pass pawn, I have 3 minor pieces, I have also very, very nice connection between these pieces, so nothing can happen here on the queen side. I cannot also get checkmated only by the queen. The black's king had also to participate in the game, but it's not possible because I can always cut off some files or ranks with this rook on d2, so I think it's perfectly fine. But as I said, this is the critical moment here after bishop on d4, queen takes on d4, c takes d4, and now d takes e7 with an attack on the rook. Of course, again, rook on e8 is also not possible. Again, rook on f7 and simply taking the rook. So that's why here bishop on e6, and now taking simply the rook. In this moment, I have the evaluation is winning for white. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. I hope it was a little bit instructive. I hope you could learn something from this game. As I said, it was a blitz game. Maybe there are some mistakes, inaccuracies, and many more. But I think you can apply some of the systems in maybe in this battle against the Perch defense, King's Indian, East Indian, or the setups with this D6 and G6 move in the first and second move, leaving this flexibility. Keep in mind, it's not the same as I mentioned in the beginning of this video. It's not the same if you have moved your bishop in the third move or in the fourth move. You see with this knight on f3 idea, if you play that, then you have some counterplay, your opponent has some counterplay possibilities. So that's how you should develop pieces, because although you're gonna play the same moves anyway, but it's not the same how you play them, in which correct order you're gonna play them, because you're leaving your opponent then maybe not such a good counterplay if you play them correct. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commentary chess games from the series, and you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. And you can also watch my chess games played by computers, AlphaZero, Lila C0, Stockfish, and many more. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thank you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.